Imagine a hero shooter where the hero never showed. Imagine a game with a player base that just refused to grow. A 5v5 hero shooter with gameplay that's just okay. And characters that remind me of Tupperware and white bread. No, I'm not talking about Overwatch. Please stop bringing up Overwatch. This game is not Overwatch. It's actually something else. Imagine a game with a story that no one watches. A game that costs $40 that Sony totally botches. It has all my favorite characters, like Lemmy, Dawn, and Craig. At least, I think that's what their names are. I never bothered to check. Concord like the grave. Your legacy is safe as a game that no one played, and a price that no one paid. Boop-a-doop-ba, keep-a-doop-da, scoop-a-boop-ba, beep-beep-beep-beep-beep, phlegm.
I'm vibing!
Concord was about as good as accidentally peeing on your own leg. Concord, we're here to lay you to rest. We know you tried your best. You copied so much cool stuff just to turn out lame in the end. I'll never forget my favorite moments, like when Hot Sauce Guy jumped. Remember when he jumped? That was really cool. A rat just ran by on my desk, and even the rat didn't want to play Concord, even though I blessed him with the chance. The $40 he could afford, but the rat just stared on in a trance. Rat, 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 rat. Concord's dead. Rat, 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 rat. Concord's dead. The Costco guys made more money than you. They were just on Jimmy Fallon too. Imagine Lennox being on Jimmy Fallon, because I literally can't. The rat on my desk is eating all my Cheerios and grapes, and also Concord is dead. Concord like the grave. Your legacy is safe as a game that no one played, and a price that no one paid. Rat-a-ta-ta-beep-a-da, boop. Skim, milk, the rat freak, doo-da, doo-da. A guy said he really liked it, and then a bunch of rats ate his face. That's the sound he made when Concord passed away. I wish things turned out different, but either way I'm getting paid. Concord's dead, Concord's dead, and boy is my face red. When the game came out, everybody overslept. Concord's dead, Concord's dead. Holy crap, Lois, Concord's dead. When the game out, people played everything else instead.
Okay, fam, here we are, rocking and rolling. There's a couple things I wanted to get to, talk about, chat about before the podcast with Jor a little bit later. So wanted to run through all of that, and yeah, then we'll lead into the podcast with Jor. Jor's been listening to the earnings call from Ubisoft all morning, which apparently has revealed some interesting info that we're going to touch on and talk about, because they shared more about pre-orders for AC Shadows. They shared more about actually how AC Odyssey did. They shared a bunch of stuff like that, so we'll talk about that. Beyond that, I saw something pop up in my feed that I didn't believe when I saw it, but then I looked it up on the Steam page of Elden Ring Night Rain, and it turns out it's true. So I'll talk about that in a second, because I'm amazed nobody's talking about this. It seems kind of like a huge deal, and like not cool, but we'll talk about it. As for The other kind of elephant in the room, of course, Avowed reviews went up today. And if you've not seen my video that went up this morning at like 7 a.m. or whatever it was, my time with Avowed, it was a broken mess for me. Like, one of the most difficult to finish games I've played in a long while. And I want you to just bear in mind that, like, we had access to a private like Discord with some devs and QA people and PR people to like try and fix stuff if we ran into a bug. And I've run into that before. Like, you might have a big review for a game and you run into a problem, and sometimes you can just email the devs directly and they'll just reply to you back and forth. I remember, I think it was Starfield, I had a bug or something, and I was able to email directly to the PR person, and then they CC'd a dev who helped me fix the thing we were dealing with. So sometimes it works like that. Other times they'll do just like a temporary Discord, or they'll do like I don't know, like a mini forum kind of thing. But this time it was a Discord, and so I was able to talk with devs like directly about these problems I was having. And it was like, it really amazed me that like I've not been told just load an older save so many times while reviewing a game. It was kind of crazy. All sorts of problems like the ones I showed in the video with the save files that are corrupted and you just can't load, to other problems where it's like, hey, I can't turn in this bounty because I just can't. It won't let me. You talk to the person you turn them into, and he just gives the generic idle dialogue, like when you walk up to an NPC and they go, "Lovely weather we're having," but you can't start a conversation. And they're like, "Yeah, that's a known bug. You just got to load to a previous save." It's like, bro, this should not be this common. It was wild. But it seems like a lot of other people have had much less trouble. A lot of other people were saying the game was really polished for them, which is remarkable because mine was not. One thing that it was interesting though, as I've seen other people's reviews, is a lot of them say that they played exclusively on one platform. They played just on Xbox or they played just on PC. I purposely tried it on multiple platforms. So I tried it on the Xbox Series X, the Series S, my main gaming PC, and my gaming laptop. And so I'm starting to wonder if something about the Xbox Cloud functionality, moving saves from PC to Xbox and back and forth, if something there caused so many of my problems. I don't know. It could be part of it, because if like some of these other people that just played it on Xbox are reporting they're having no issues. But there is another YouTuber I know for a fact ran into one of the massive soft locks that I ran into, because they were in the same support thing that I was, looking for help with it. And there's been a number of other people I know that ran into issues, and I checked out their reviews and they don't mention any of the issues in their reviews. So I'm waiting for emails back, because I'm wondering, like, okay, did they get confirmation that those issues were patched out and fixed, or did they just not talk about the tech issues they ran into for some reason? Like, I don't know. The whole thing's been weird, though. The whole thing has been very, very weird. That'll be a lot harder to fix than game bugs. I mean, I think there's something about Avowed where when something breaks, a lot of stuff breaks. Like when you have the first, I think, soft lock, when a quest breaks, there's something about the game's questing system that leads to a bunch of other cascading issues and soft locks and breaks. And I don't know why that is. It is way above my pay grade. And the devs didn't seem to know why it would be happening either. Because when I told them about all this stuff, and so I eventually got to the point where I figured out what was causing one of these soft locks. And I can kind of chart it out on MS Paint for you, because it won't spoil if I am just drawing like the gameplay side of it. But basically, like, there's a point in the game, the really bad soft lock I ran into is there's a point in the game where you come out of a building. Okay, ooh, it's a building. You come out of the building and then you're standing on like a cliff. Okay, and you stand here and you're looking at something here. Okay, like a big building. And you get a quest objective that tells you, go to that place. It gives you a little quest marker at like the front, basically the front door. It says, go there. And this is part of a main story, like main quest. And so what you do as a player is most likely you're going to travel down the cliff and you're going to walk over there and then you're going to try to go in the door. But you can't. There's you're not actually supposed to go in through the front door. What you're supposed to do is actually talk to one of your companions who is also standing on the cliffside. But for me, at least, on multiple reloads, multiple save files, everything, there is no quest marker to tell you to talk to that person. There just isn't. Even though like this companion is the one that's like saying and wants to go to this place, if you don't talk to that person and instead you just race straight to here, which is kind of what is implied, at least I took it as implied to do. Like there's a serious thing going on here. You need to run there. And so I tried to make a beeline to it, but when you do that, this bit of dialogue disappears and you can no longer speak to this companion to clear the quest objective to go here, because what happens is you talk to this person and that companion says, oh, actually, basically, we don't need to go there. Let's instead go over there. Or let's go, you know, to the north where somebody else is. And then it clears that objective, right? But if you leave and you walk about 100 meters away, that dialogue clears. You can't talk to her again. And now there is no way to ever clear this quest objective. So you are soft locked. You cannot progress the main story, except you're able to sort of progress the main story into a new branch. So a new like sub quest within the main story, but you can never clear this objective. So you're stuck. So even though you can play for another 2, 3, 4 hours after that and do even more side stuff on top of that, you can never clear this main story objective because you didn't talk to this person who wasn't marked. Now, I think the easiest fix is to just make it a quest objective to talk to that person, and then every player will see that and will go talk to her before running down the hill. But that isn't in the game, at least not the version I played on Xbox, Series S, X, PC. It wasn't there. And so I ran into this soft lock. And after realizing, I thought like, oh, I should just go here later. I thought that's why I couldn't get in, because you show up at the front door and you just aren't allowed in. So I was like, oh, I must have to go later. I got to go explore something. Right? So I went off, played hours and hours more. And then finally I was like, I am going crazy. I cannot figure out why I can't get in this door. I reached out to them and they're like, no, you're never supposed to even like get to the point where you go and try to open the doors. And I told them some of the other stuff I had done after that. And they're like, oh, and that building still kind of looks like that. Yeah, it's not supposed to look like that anymore. It's supposed to stop once you do the next little thing. Something's clearly broken. Load an earlier save. So I had to go all the way back to a save, and you come out of this building like after a pretty big reveal, big thing happens. So after that, I had to go back to before we did that, replay all of it, and then I came out here, and because I didn't know this was the cause of it, I basically did something very similar again, soft lock again. So I had to go reload again, play through it, and then try something else. And then I finally was like, well, let me talk to the companion, like all my companions, and see if that does something. I did that, and then the quest objective clears, and I can progress. So I had to debug it myself. Like I had to figure it out myself, and then I told the devs what went wrong. And I helped a couple of other people in the server that ran into the same problem, because it was not just me. Interestingly, though, I know one of the people I helped fix this soft lock, and they did not mention this soft lock in their review, which was weird. I just don't know why. And I asked them if this was fixed, and they said it's being addressed in a future update. And I'm like, okay, but does that mean next year? Or does that mean like launch day? Does that mean day 0 with early access? Like what does that mean? What does that mean? So anyway, my time with it, clearly, to be very, very clear, my time with the game was certainly an outlier, okay? The vast majority of people who played it are saying that their time with it was solid, was polished, was good enough. I must just be a bug magnet and a broken quest magnet. But seriously, I almost gave up on trying to finish the game like 4 or 5 times, because it was just like the game didn't want me to finish it. It was insane. It was like every time I'd get past a soft lock, I'd run into a new thing, or my saves would lock up and crash, or like there was just always something else. And it's too bad, because otherwise I think the game is pretty good. Like, that's the thing. People are like, oh, you're a hater. No, I'm saying play the game just when it's fixed. And if the version of the game that's launching today, or whenever early access goes up, if that version is polished and it's good, yeah, go play the game. I'm just saying what I played, which is all I can speak about because that's all I got exposed to. What I played, I would not play right now. I would wait. That's my recommendation. So anyway, will you review the game when it's fixed later down the road? In the last half of the review, I basically talk about it, assuming everything else is fixed. And my stance pretty much seems to be in line with most people, which is that it's like it's a B-, C+ kind of game. Like, it has problems. The inventory is extremely annoying to deal with. The quest lines are all really short. So there's companion quest lines and stuff, but they're really compressed. Certainly feels like they were tightening everything up a lot. The traversal and exploration is actually very, very good. I really enjoyed that you could look around nooks and crannies and stuff and always find a cool piece of treasure. I mean, I even found an axe that would deal poison buildup, and I got perks and skills that would add bleed buildup with great axes, and a couple of other little things you can do to customize your character. And so I got to the point by the end of the game that I was able to do charged attacks that within 1 or 2 hits would deal full bleed, full poisoning, and could also like stun lock enemies. So it has like pretty good customization within the combat side of things if you want to min-max it. And in terms of choice and consequence and decision making and stuff, there's a lot of good stuff there. I made a choice like 4 or 5 hours into the game that they kind of suggest, again, no spoilers, but they kind of suggest this could have a big impact, you know, if you choose to leave this thing standing basically or destroy it. And I decided to leave it standing and leave it as it was. And then in the final, like, you know, dozens of hours later, when the cutscene montage thing is playing, showing you the ending you got, it actually referred back to that choice I made all the way back then. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I like that. Of course, it could have been extra cool if there was something like gameplay related, where you actually see that play out in the game. But instead, like, it was still referenced in the ending, which I can appreciate, you know. So I like it. Do you think it's worth to play? I got a RTX 2070 and an OK PC. Do you think I'll bet I'm running? Here's the thing. It's a game that mandates upscalers and probably frame generation as well. It's just one of those. It's just one of those games where it's really heavy. It's an Unreal Engine 5 game. To be clear, if you're asking me about my performance and how the game ran for me, it was a bit of a dumpster fire, but I'm an outlier. So I have the supercomputer and I have my gaming laptop, and I've tried it on the Xboxes as well. And it was sluggish and had problems with performance for me, especially in a later game area. There's an area that I'm not even sure if they want me to say the name of it, so I'll play cautiously and I won't. But there's like the 4th zone that you go to. They specifically said we're not allowed to show any gameplay footage of it. So not even screenshots. And they said it was for sake of spoilers, which, sure, okay, whatever. But That's where most of my major performance and technical issues started to crop up. I had things where like NPC or companions would drop to like 15 frames a second during conversations and cutscenes and stuff, but everybody else was perfectly fine and moving at 60 frames. All sorts of weird frame drops, random crashes. There's an area in that later zone where for whatever reason, like if this is the map, you know, the player is running around doing whatever, there was just a massive zone that I could not get close to. If I came here, crash. If I came here, crash. If I was running around here, crash. If I'd run over here, game crashes. And then I found one little spot where I could climb up on a rock and kind of go through a crevasse and it wouldn't crash for me. And then it auto-saved. And so then when I would load back in, because the reason I wanted to go in here is because there was a bounty target. So there's like a big boss guy you got to fight. And so I went in there, fought the guy, I die. And so it's going to reload me to the autosave, right? Wrong. The autosave was in the crash zone. So then I couldn't do that. I had to load back. Yeah, you say it with me, to an earlier save. And I had to go all the way back and then try to run back through and do the thing. But it was just a mess. It was a mess. And again, I had the privilege of working with the devs and QA people. So I was telling them about all this stuff. We reinstalled drivers. We tried it on multiple pieces of hardware. We tried it on the Xbox versus the Series S versus the PC. And this particular crash was far less common on Xbox. It seems like the zone was maybe like this big on Xbox that would cause it to crash for me, so I could go do the quest. But like most people, if they're playing a game like this, they don't have the privilege of playing on PC and then getting up and moving to their Xbox in the living room and then going back downstairs to play the rest of it on their PC. Most people don't do that because I'm crazy and I have all the gadgets and stuff. Most people can't do that, okay? They have one device and that's what they do. The fact that I had to go up and down the stairs just to progress through a quest line is like kind of silly. dare I say, I'm Avowed, okay? Like I'm just thoroughly frustrated by it. So there's just been a lot of those types of problems and little hiccups and just headaches. That's the thing. Like I like Avowed when it works. I think it's a fun game and it's the perfect kind of game for Game Pass because it's a game that I think a lot of people would not bother with if they had to pay $70, which bear in mind is the full price of this. There's just so many headaches that I experienced while trying to enjoy it that sucked all the fun right out of it. But that's why I've been telling everybody, like, in my opinion, based on my experience, which is all I can speak to, I would wait at least for the day one patch. Don't buy early access. Don't be there testing guinea pig. Wait till the day one patch on the 18th, which I think is officially launch day, and play the game with that update, where a lot of this probably is addressed, hopefully, but we don't know for sure. And, worst case scenario, if you run into some of these bugs, you can come in and talk in chat and I can tell you how I got around it. Because I'll be able to show you all the footage and capture and stuff by then. But yeah, for me, it was just one massive headache. As for like the game itself, is it perfect? No, it's got plenty of problems. It is a AA RPG through and through. It has a lot of jank. It has some really crappy facial animations. I don't know if it's a bug or not, but there's multiple like in-game zones and areas where it's like they have a bucket of NPCs that they pick to populate like shops or towns or cities and stuff. And there's multiple cities where like, or cities, there's multiple zones that you'll walk into where it's like an entire city district. And like, there won't be a single like male NPC in the entire city. And it's like so jarring that you're like, there must be a narrative reason for this. What's happening? Oh. And so you go in and you like talk to people and it's like, no. And then you reload and then it's fine, and it's kind of a mixture of people, but it's just like there's all sorts of weird little bugs and strange things with the game. It's just janky. Like, it's just janky and kind of clunky. Maddie, I know, mentioned in his review that that they're like, the game originally started as a multiplayer game. It was going to be like a co-op multiplayer thing, kind of like Dragon Age Veilguard. Kind of funny how how all of these like single player RPGs started as multiplayer games for whatever reason. But with that, I could kind of see why the game is set up the way that it is, and why there's some structural things the way that it is. I feel like the camp is totally underutilized, and I think that that probably was something built for matchmaking and like getting into a zone with your parties or party members. So I think that there's just, all of this to say, it just needed more time. It just needed more time. That's the thing. That's the thing. Needed more time. So if you're really interested in playing it, I think you should, because when it worked, I had fun with Avowed. But the when it worked is the important little tidbit that I can't just blindly say, yeah, it's amazing, it's great. It's just it needs those updates. It needs the patches. And maybe those come on day one. I don't know. They just wouldn't tell me. And I think it's because they didn't even know for sure whether it was getting fixed or not, but yeah. Here, this one, because it's 10, it should have text to speech.
Jonathan Pennell donated $10 through Super Chat.
Thank you, my friend.
Hey Luke, I'm curious about your thoughts on how gamers can view 9 reviews rate a game positively, but only care about the 1 review rated it negatively?
Well, with all reviews, it's not a matter of, it's why I kind of have a problem with like Metacritic in general, because it's not necessarily about looking at the average of a bunch of reviews. It's about finding the reviewer that tends to be in line with your tastes and personality and what you like, what you don't like, and then looking at what they say and what they recommend. Because if you really love maybe MMOs, and then you see all the 10 out of 10 scores for Super Mario Odyssey, it doesn't mean that you're going to think that's a masterpiece, right? Like, the key is, what's the background of the reviewer? Why did they give it a 10? And appreciating that. There's some people that are going to look at my review or Maddie's review that, you know, weren't necessarily super positive, and they're going to stick to that and use that as like justification for a preconceived notion they had, which I think is maybe short-sighted or dismissive, because at the same time, I'm telling you right now, my review is an outlier. Most people are saying they didn't run into very many, if any, technical issues. I ran into many, to the point where it almost entirely destroyed and ruined my time with the game. So I just think it depends on why the people are giving it the scores they are, and what their track records are, and how you connect with that reviewer. But certainly if there's a strong outlier, that probably is not indicative of the overall experience that most people are going to have. You know, I would guess, based on the current reviews, most people will go through the game, if they just play it on Xbox or just play it on PC, they should have a pretty good time with it, it seems. And they won't run into most of the problems and hiccups that I ran into. But all I can do as a reviewer is explain and justify my experience with the game and what I ran into. And that's at least what I tried to do. But thank you for the super chat. Very generous, $10. Thank you. Danny, thank you for that one. Just started watching you and I loved every video I've seen, starting to become my favorite gaming content creator. Thank you, my friend. Much love. Blake, thank you for the 5. You see the IGN controversy today about that journo who will purposely dock points from a game because it's not political enough. So stupid, man. Was it not political? The one I saw was that they were like, if a game refers to the Gulf of America, then they'll dock it or something like that. I think there was something like that. But that was like a handful of days ago. So I'm not sure if that's the same thing you're talking about, if it's the same story. But yeah, I mean, I would imagine if you're telling people that you're going to bring in like a political, if that even is a political issue, I mean, it's the name of a Gulf. Like, are we really freaking out over that? Yeah, you're right. Let's call it the Gulf of Todd, the Gulf of Todd Howard. Let's do that. Everybody can agree on that. Either way, I just, whatever the cause is, if somebody's saying that they're going to bring something not related to the game into the review of a game, I don't know why they're reviewing games. You know? Like, if you're going to review a game badly because one of the developers said something you didn't like, I don't see how that's fair to review the game for that. I don't understand it.
Goats donated $10 through Super Chat.
Goats, thank you.
Really hoping Avowed holds up for me after watching your coverage of it. The point you made about the need for the player to trust that the game works was some great insight that's gonna stick with me.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's why whenever there's bugs and stuff with a game like this, and specifically broken quests, it betrays the trust of the player. It's like when you're playing a game like Elden Ring, if hitboxes are bad or if the game doesn't register your hits properly, that trust between the player and the game breaks. And once that breaks, it's really hard to get it back, because then at any point when you lose that boss fight, you can't tell if it was you that lost it because of your own mistakes, or if it was because the hitboxes were bad, or because the damage didn't calculate right, or because there was some bug or something. It's why polish and refinement is so crucial to certain components of different games if they're tied to the experience. And with RPGs, broken quest lines are like a death knell. I mean, it's something that you cannot justify. Because for me, I played through hours and hours and hours of the game, and then I had to go back and redo it all because of the broken quests. And so then any point later in the game when I was like, oh, this puzzle's really tricky, or I can't find a way. There was another time where I couldn't find the way to a quest marker that it gave me. Turns out I just needed to go a different route that was kind of hidden. But I, for a moment, was like, is it broken again? Did I run into another soft lock? Oh God. Because that trust was broken. And so I think it's just really crucial that that is maintained. And that's why I'm like, just be safe. My recommendation, either way, but I'm a little traumatized, to be fair. My recommendation would be to just wait. Just wait. But yeah, Blake, going back to your thing, yeah, whenever a reviewer would be saying that they're going to dock a game for stuff not related to the game, I don't know why anybody would hire them to review a game. If you hired me to go review a restaurant, you said, Luke, how's Cosmo's Pizza? I'm like, oh, very generous portions, delicious pizza, fresh. The spicy ranch dipping sauce for the crust is amazing. It's also not that expensive. It's fantastic. But also, like, the building next door is owned by the same owner of this building that Cosmos is in, and he's like a real jerk. And he was in the other building, and he was like, he smelled bad. So 7 out of 10. You'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? That has nothing to do with the pizza or the restaurant. Like, you're bringing something else into it that has nothing to do with the question at hand. And you wouldn't take me seriously, nor should you. And in that case, with that person that's like very openly saying they're going to dock a game because of something not related to the game, it's like, if they are allowed to review other stuff for IGN, that's kind of hilarious, and IGN should be embarrassed. Russell, thank you for that. How many Concordillion dollars was spent on Avowed? I don't know. Not as much as you'd probably think, because I think it was a smaller team. Definitely tighter budget. I'd be interested in knowing how much time they spent on it as a mobile or as a multiplayer game before pivoting to single player. I'm not sure. Love Sammy. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for the 5, my friend. Much love. And then Aiden, thank you for the 5 thoughts on Days Gone Remastered. Sorry if you've already talked about it. I love Days Gone. I gave it my game of the year in 2019 because it was the game I most wanted to see a sequel to. Honestly, if I could go back and pick a different game, I would pick a different game, but you know, what are you going to do? And so I like Days Gone a lot, but that remaster looks like just the PC port, and that horde mode is cool. It I think it should be a free update. Like, frankly, charging $10 even, $10 for the upgrade to it. I struggle to find the value in that. And I like it too. I like that game. And even then I'm like, this is just, they won't greenlight a sequel, but they'll greenlight a cash grab to quickly try and grab some change from nostalgic fans. Because what do you see all over social media? Everybody's like, you have to buy it if you want a sequel, because that's how we vote that we want a sequel. And that's exactly why Sony's doing it. They don't care about doing a sequel to Days Gone. They just know that it's going to be an easy way to monetize the fan base and the cult following. Like, so I thought it was like a little bedeviling. Frankly. Okay, caught up there. Drifter Inc. Thank you also for subbing with Prime over on Twitch, my friend. Thank you. Do you think they're going to try to attempt to port Avowed to PlayStation if numbers aren't what they anticipated? Or do you think they'll be happy with Game Pass figures? No, it's going to go to PlayStation. 1000%. I think within like a year, it's probably on PlayStation. I'd be shocked if it stays on Xbox. Shocked. So let me talk about this though. Let me bring up this for you guys, okay? Shifting topics. News segment. So I saw this pop up on my feed on X and I was like, there's no way that's true. I thought somebody was trolling me. I thought somebody was joking. And then I pulled it up on Steam and it turns out it's true. I don't know why nobody else is bringing this up or talking about it, because it seems insane to me. And I need people to like talk me off the cliff or explain it to me like I'm 5. Elden Ring Night Rain. Okay, we've talked about it, whether you think it looks amazing or like a cheap cash grab, whatever. But there has been a thing in the industry where people hold publishers' feet to the fire when they start monetizing stuff excessively, especially gameplay affecting stuff, especially in games that are multiplayer and online. And if they start to do that in a pretty slimy, scummy way, people typically bring it up and address it and make a big hullabaloo about it. Remember Dragon's Dogma? It was a single player game and they were selling those port crystals and people were losing their minds over it because it was like a $3 port crystal or $2 port crystal that, was that Capcom made them sell? Or was it Bandai Namco? Whichever one. But with Elden Ring Night Rain, there's something very interesting labeled in the deluxe edition that I want to point out. If we scroll down. So bonus gestures, who cares? For pre-ordering, you get a bonus gesture, who cares? They can also obtain this later in the game. Cool, whatever. I want to point out the deluxe edition. Zoom, enhance. Deluxe edition includes the game, okay. Additional DLC, okay, like a season pass, whatever. Additional playable characters and bosses. What? They're selling additional playable characters and additional bosses. If you buy the deluxe edition, according to this, you get more bosses that you can fight and additional playable characters. What? Why is this not being brought up? Here's the thing. As I'm trying to like break it down, they do have additional DLC labeled as a bullet point, and then they have this lined as like a line. And this is what I think it is, but I think they could clarify. I think this is supposed to be indented as a sub point for additional DLC, meaning that you get the additional playable characters included for free and the additional bosses for free, or not in free, but like included in your purchase, right? Kind of like as a season pass. It still, to me, is signaling that they're planning on charging for playable characters and they're planning on charging for additional bosses. Charging for additional characters with like different builds. Okay, like I understand it's kind of like sort of a live service game. Like they got to monetize it somehow and that's how they're going to do it. But selling additional bosses and boss fights as like a different maybe season or different map or something like that just feels bad, man. That feels really bad. So I think that that's what this is. I don't think, knock on wood, that they mean that like day one, you're getting 12 playable characters instead of the 8 that they've announced. And then you also will get more bosses spawning than regular players. I don't think that's what they're saying. What I think they're saying, based on this being a line and not a dot, enhance, 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 enhance. I think what that line means is that it's going to basically be like the seasonal updates or whatever expansion, whatever they end up calling them, that introduce a new night cycle or a new day-night final boss cycle. And there will be some that will be themed differently. So maybe there's like a fall one that's Halloween themed and everything's on fire and everything's kind of red. And in order to play that, you have to pay for the expansion that includes that. I still don't really like that because I don't like it when games segment their player bases based on how much money they have. I just don't like that personally. I don't like it in single player games, certainly. And I don't like it in live service games either. I think it's sucky to separate your player bases based on their income. It's why I like how at least like Overwatch changed and stopped charging $20 for new heroes and started including them all for everybody so everybody could play them. And I like how that approach has been taken with some other live service style games, like Marvel Rivals, for example. They don't force you to pay $40 to get the 2 new characters. They're like, no, just play it. And then if you enjoy it, you'll probably spend money elsewhere. I think that's good. It equalizes everything for everybody. I don't like it when they separate players based on income. Like gaming, I feel, should be an escape from the headaches of real world problems and that. And if you save the money to buy the game up front, I feel like you should be treated just the same as everybody else. Maybe that's just me. But anyway, I still think it's interesting that it's not really been brought up or clarified. Maybe it's just worded clunkily, but seeing something separated out based on how much money you spend, specifically with new playable characters and bosses, implies they're going to be charging for new characters and bosses later. Characters, I get it. It's not PvP or anything, so it's not that crucial. But charging also for separate bosses, again, does that just mean that they're going to be new bosses you fight within the roguelite cycle? Or does that mean that it's going to be an entirely new area or zone? Who can say? But either way, whatever it is, I personally don't like that style of monetization. I'd rather they treat all players equally. That's my stance. Do you think Sony will end up acquiring From Software? No, they had that whole story where they were looking at buying, and the company that owns From Software wanted Sony to buy them outright, but Sony apparently didn't want a lot of the other stuff that they had and would basically be just really overpaying for what they really wanted. So yeah, I think that they are going to buy out a little chunk, and I think they already did that technically. And they probably increased their partnership and stuff, but Sony as a company, I think after Bungie, I think they really, really are burnt on big acquisitions. I think it would be nigh impossible to get the new guy, Hideki, or it's Hideki Totoki, that's his name. I think it would be nigh impossible to get him to sign off on like a massive multi-billion-dollar acquisition. I think he's so burnt out on it because they've wasted so many billions of dollars. So I don't think there's going to be any huge acquisitions from Sony anytime soon. Eventually, sure, but I don't think anytime soon. Let's see. Close that. Also, I wanted to debunk this real quick because this is BS. Okay. I've seen some people, because you guys know I like true crime stuff and I like Titanic and I like Victorian London and Jack the Ripper stuff. Somebody sent me this. A breakthrough in forensic history. Historian Russell Edwards claims Jack the Ripper has been identified as Aaron Kosminski, a Polish barber and longtime suspect, after a 100% DNA match. This is the thing. Shocker. not everything you read on X is true. Okay. This guy, Russell Edwards, he's an author of a book, and the book is called Naming Jack the Ripper. And he's a firm believer in this. Let's see, is this it? Yeah, this. He wrote this book on the case, and basically, long story short, there's a shawl that one of the police officers at the time claimed to have taken off of like one of the crime scenes, and then he kept it in his family in like a drawer for over a century, and then it passed from him to his daughter to her son and blah blah blah, and it passed all the way forward. And then they took the shawl, got it DNA tested with the oh crap, what's the not familial DNA, it's the one passed from your mother. Balls, what is that type of DNA evidence called? It's not genealogical, it's specifically maternal. There's like another specific name for it. It's like mitochondrial. Thank you, Kotor, you're right, mitochondrial. It's mitochondrial DNA that they use to say that this is totally Jack the Ripper, because the DNA on the shawl matched like a long distant relative of Aaron Kosminski, who was like a crazy lunatic who was locked in an insane asylum later after the fact. And so some people have suggested he was it. Also because the original investigators were pretty sure that it was like a crazy person. And they also believed that it was a Jew who killed all the women, kind of like a bigotry, as it were. And Kosminski was. And so they have this mitochondrial DNA match. But the thing is, mitochondrial DNA can only be used to prove that somebody did not do something because it's so imprecise. Like, I think the breakdown of that book I saw was like, yeah, roughly 6% of the entire population of London would match that woman's mitochondrial DNA or something like that. It was like hilariously broad. So all of that to say, no. It could be Aaron Kosminski that was Jack the Ripper. It's possible. There's, evidence pointing in that direction. But Kosminski was one of those suspects at the time that was pushed because he fit what Victorian English police officers thought it would take to be a serial killer. They thought it was like a raving lunatic. But in the modern day, we know that serial killers tend to be very disarming. They tend to not look like serial killers. They don't talk like serial killers. Like, the reason they're successful is because they were able to disarm people and make them feel comfortable. Like they were able to do that very, very easily. And so most likely Jack the Ripper was somebody that you would not think was Jack the Ripper. It was somebody that was able to go up to these women and make them feel comfortable enough to walk with him to like a dark corner of a street, a bit like me. How dare you? So anyway, that triggered me because it's like a reposting about a book from years ago that's been like largely debunked and discredited. Like, he makes some interesting arguments in it, and Kosminski could have been Jack the Ripper. I just think it's really unlikely. I think it's really, really unlikely.
Bender the Offender donated $10 through Super Chat.
I love that name.
Since Borderlands 4 got a release date, that puts GTA 6 between the months of October to December. If it doesn't get delayed to 2026, that is.
Yeah, the announcements of their release dates are very interesting because it does signal that they're going to put something, because I think they said that Mafia is expected. I think they said on the earnings call Mafia is this summer, which would put it like July to August, probably, because I don't think they'd release it in June. I think they do like a launch trailer in June at Summer Games Fest, and then launch the game in July, and then move forward from there with Borderlands in September, whenever it was, and then GTA 6 in like November, probably. I would guess that. They had success with October. Take-Two in the past has released a lot of big stuff in October, like late October. So it's possible that they do something with like GTA 6 in late October. The only thing is, I think they'd be more comfortable doing a full 2-month gap between Borderlands 4's release and GTA 6, because I think that they're going to want to rev up marketing for GTA 6 and stuff. So that would be my guess. Yeah, and September 23rd was Borderlands release date. So I think that probably November. I think probably November. If they actually are still sticking to 2025. Goats, thank you for the membership. What's my biggest gaming prediction of 2025? Biggest gaming prediction of 2025? I don't know what a big prediction would be. Maybe... Do I have any fun, like crazy, outrageous announcements? I think it's... I don't know, man. I don't know if I have any fun predictions or like speculations. GTA 6 delayed. No. You know, I'll say I think the new Fable is going to be much better than people expect it to be. That's my prediction. Just a gut feeling. Also, yes, it has a cast member from the IT crowd in it, so I'm a little biased, but still, I love the IT crowd. That's good old classic British television. So good. Somebody asked who I think was Jack the Ripper. I've actually been convinced of a different suspect. There's a guy that said his name was Charles Allen Cross, and he was at the scene of one of the murders. I forget, maybe the second one. He was the one that found the body, and he was found by another guy, and he's like leaning over the body who had just been killed minutes before, and he says, "Oh yes, I just found this woman here." And he identified himself as Charles Cross, which was not his real name. So he's at the scene of the crime, leaning over the decedent, within minutes of her being killed, like literally 1, 2, 3 minutes. He's found there, and then he gives a false name, which is weird. And he was not investigated at all because he was not like a raving lunatic, which the police thought the murderer would have to be. They said, no, his serial killers they can't even talk. They're raving lunatics. Like they didn't think that he'd be like cool, calm, and collected. And he's actually one of the few suspects that we have a picture of him much, much later in life, posing outside of one of his houses, or a house that he lived at. And this is what he looked like. So we actually have a picture of him. They've done like digital alterations and stuff to upscale it. But yeah, we actually have a picture of him. So I think if I had to put money on it, probably this guy. I think this guy stands a really good chance, because it's weird to be at the scene of a crime and be over the body and then give false information to the police. Like that, red flags everywhere, man. All over the place. Like, oh. Let's talk about this real quick. We've got Joe Raptor in 20 minutes. Okay. We got Joe Raptor in 20 minutes. So I've got to catch up on all of this. Blake, thank you for the 5. I rewatched the Sony State of Play again, and I think a lot of people are underestimating that the games shown are really good for the most part. 7 out of 10. I mean, it might be really good. I think like the new game from Housemarque, probably really, really good, but it's a cinematic trailer. Like, it's hard to get excited for that. Borderlands, it'll probably be fine, or pretty good. Like, I just think a lot of people were hoping for some first party stuff, some more first party stuff, and there just wasn't a ton of that. I think I read those. Okay, and then it's Moo. Thank you for the sub with Prime. Thank you, my friend. Okay. So I wanted to talk about this because we're going to talk about Assassin's Creed pre-order numbers because we do have those. We're going to talk about those on the podcast with Jor because he's been listening to the earnings call. He has some exciting news. Turns out AC Odyssey has done significantly better than we thought it did. It's apparently up towards Valhalla numbers in terms of total units, which is crazy. So, and apparently pre-orders for Shadows are pretty much right in line with Odyssey, which, to be clear, wrong button, sorry. To be clear, being in line with Odyssey means that it's probably going to be one of the AC games that has a long tail. Odyssey started out slower and then picked up steam and eventually caught up and did pretty well. Of course, like at this point, it did very well, you know, if we look at it today. But Shadows probably is one of those. And my stance has been that I think Shadows probably does good in terms of sales. But I don't know if it does good enough or exceptionally well enough to save Ubisoft from itself, like to save it from Yves Guillemot and the leadership and everything, because I think a lot of the writing's already on the wall. I think they need like $1 billion success, and I just don't know if there's any way that AC Shadows could ever be that. You know, I'm not convinced. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out, but I still think the odds are very good. Maybe this is my answer to your thing, Dovahkiin, with your super chat. What's your biggest prediction for the year of 2025? I think there's a really good chance that Tencent ends up stepping in and becoming either a majority or very close to majority owner of Ubisoft. I think they probably take it private. I think they restructure a lot, and that would not surprise me at all. So maybe that's my prediction. But that being said, I want to talk about this now. New segment. So in my preview coverage of AC Shadows, I somehow managed to make everybody mad at the same time. I had people saying that I was a hater, you know, on the AC Shadows subreddit. People were like, he's a hater. He's not giving the game enough love. And then on the flip side, I had people saying that I was glazing it too much. I was being too generous and too kind, which probably means I was doing something right if both extremes are upset. But one of my main takeaways from those previews was that I said I'm not convinced of Yasuke's inclusion as a playable character, because it seems like you've created an Assassin's Creed game and then you've taken what would normally be one protagonist, split them in two with their abilities, and one of them is an actual assassin who can parkour, who can stealth, who can do all the like eagle vision, all the classic AC stuff. And then the other character is Yasuke, who can do none of that, but can hit stuff really hard. And to me, cool, like whatever. I don't like, that's not my preferred playstyle, but I can understand some people love melee combat. But I don't know why he's in an Assassin's Creed game if he can't do literally anything an assassin can do. I understand the argument that it's like, oh, well, we have to separate them out and make them feel different. And I agree, you should. Having two protagonists that play identically also begs the same question, why are there two protagonists? But having two protagonists that are very different, one that is very at home, damn near perfectly suited for an Assassin's Creed game, and then another one that is not at all suited for an AC game, begs the same question. Why are there two protagonists? Why do we have two playable characters? And there's a new, sort of new article and interview from Jonathan Demont, the creative director, that he did with Screen Rant, where he talked about this, okay? As you can see in the title, AC Shadows players won't be, quote, missing out if they largely ignore one protagonist. Okay. Knee-jerk reaction is, again, like, if the experience is such that you can just ignore one of the protagonists, I would ask, well, then why are they there? But okay, let's hear it out, because this goes both ways. I know some people are going to immediately go, okay, so the game has been worked in a way where you can just ignore Yasuke. But this would imply ignoring Nawe also will not harm your experience, which is not something I would have thought, because when I played it, there's all sorts of things that Nawe can do that Yasuke can't, right? The things Yasuke can do that Nawe can't are like run through doors. He has an easier time in melee combat, but that's kind of it. Like he also has some challenges where he can ride on horseback and shoot targets as like a mini game. He's got stuff like that. But I think if you did not play the game at all as Nawe, you would miss out on a lot. So let's see what he says. So what he said was creative director Jonathan Dumont told Screen Rant that AC Shadows won't force players to play both stealthy with Nawe and with the brutish Yasuke in equal measure when it arrives on March 20th, nor will it lock off certain parts of the game to those who prefer one over the other, which is interesting because it did seem like that was the case in the previews, at least. He says, quote, I don't think you're missing out on things too much. So too much, not quite what the title says. I think it's more on your preference to say, okay, I'll see how the game will adapt a little bit to the character if you choose one over the other. They get individual introductions and then they get their own quest line. Also, let's say for Nawe, a personal quest line cannot be played by Yasuke, and those are two distinct things, but the core of the game can be to pick your character and the game adapts to it. Which is interesting. He says, quote, we're not imposing players to try and split time. If you prefer one character for any reason, you can play maybe, I don't know, I'm not going to put a percentage, but quite a bit of the game using one of them. But if you want to balance it out, I play quite a bit balanced out. And what happens is I play with one for 3, 4, 5 hours, and then I switch, and then I just play 2 to 3 hours. Usually I play stealth and then say, all right, let me destroy some camps and stuff. All right, for a while. And then I just change like that. So swapping in and out, going back and forth based on the activity. But all of this brings me back to what I think a lot of people have brought up before. Which is that, like, I think when you're designing an Assassin's Creed game, there are certain expectations. There's certain things people want. And there's certain things they don't want. And we won't know till we play the full game, of course. But whenever I see a game start to spread themselves a little thinner, in this case having 2 protagonists, you have to ask, what was the sacrifice you made there? This is why I think it was totally justified when people found out about Elden Ring being open world and being like a FromSoft game, but it's open world. A lot of people, even in like the most hardcore FromSoft community, were like, I don't think I like that. That I'm not sure if that works, because I like how tight the levels are, how intricate they are. I'm not sure if I like going open world. I think they were justified in being skeptical of that. It just turns out the game was so good, it managed to pull it off. But I think it was reasonable to be suspicious of that because it sounded so insane. And then the fact that they raised to the occasion was all the more impressive. But with this, I think when I see them spreading themselves out and doing something ambitious, having 2 playable characters, it makes it significantly more difficult to juggle all of that at the same time. Because now you have to think of it like when you're exploring, what I said in my preview was, I don't know why you would ever play the game just exploring as Yasuke. He can't free climb like parkour. He can't do that. So if you want to run through the jungle, swinging through like the temples that have collapsed and stuff that they've shown in some of the gameplay footage, going and exploring levels and stuff, stealthing your way, looking for treasures, that's just something you can't do as Yasuke. You just can't. Yes, he can technically go prone, yeah, but it's not what he's designed for. He doesn't have a grapple hook. He can't free climb up the same stuff. He just can't. So right off the bat, I was like, I think right there, you're probably spending 70, 80% of your time as Nawe. And the only time you would ever swap to Yasuke is if you were going to go in there and try to like crush some skulls while clearing out a camp or something. And what's funny is that this is pretty much exactly what Jonathan says he does when he plays. He says, I play with one, I'm guessing Nawe, for 3, 4, 5 hours, and then I switch. Usually play stealth, so suggesting that the stealth was the first thing he says. Play for 5 hours with stealth, and then go clear out some camps for 2, 3 hours with Yasuke. So exactly what I kind of expected would be the answer, which is that you go explore as Nawe, you play most of the core of the game as Nawe, and then you swap to Yasuke for some quick melee combat, and then you swap back. And maybe it doesn't affect the overall experience, maybe it doesn't change anything, you know? But I still just find it really strange, because that means that they have to try and build parts of the game to appeal and fulfill the needs of each character. And you just think of like the quests and missions that we did in the preview. They had to have it designed in a way where it's playable for a stealth brute, or for a melee brute type of archetype, and also for somebody stealthing their way around the level. And that's not that easy. I mean, it's really tough to have a good black box stealth arena for you to explore and navigate, while also having a solid, like, melee arena, whatever you would call it. I don't even know. So I think whenever I find out more about it, I get cautious and a little suspicious, because I'm like, I just want to know why they did this instead of just focusing on Nawe. Because in some of the stealth missions we did, and it could have just been a freaking artifact of the preview. Maybe it's not actually the case in the final version. Maybe, can I go here? I just want to show a clip of like a wall. Here, this is a good spot. So what it was so weird is that we had this mission where Nawe's gotta go get to the target up top, but there were invisible walls, which was really, really strange. So like if I go MS Paint, okay, there were invisible walls while we were exploring and climbing around that were drawn like right through the middle of these buildings. Okay, so it just like cut through here, and then it cuts along that barrier, cuts this building, and you just couldn't go out of these zones, which was just really, really weird, because it was like, if I want to climb down and around, why can't I do that? It was because of the demo. The guy that I talked to, the demoist behind me, who, to be clear and to be fair, was in QA, so could be wrong, but he said that the missions were set up the way that they were to keep players, and specifically Nawe and Yasuke, at the same like pace, because they didn't want a situation where basically, like in the mission, if you think of it as like being split, that's the worst color I could have picked. If you think of it split like this is the total gameplay time of the mission, and it's split into like thirds. Here they'll prompt you if you want to swap back to Yasuke from Nawe, and then here they'll also ask you, and then for the final boss fight they'll ask you if you want to swap back. And so they wanted to avoid a problem where players just like run from the bottom of the building, climb up, and then end up in the boss fight, skipping all of those prompts to swap. So they want to make sure that Yasuke and Nawe were basically going through the mission at the same time. So it could have just been this one particular mission set up that way, but who can say? Who can say? The point with all this, though, is time will tell. When we see the final version of the game, I'm sure we're gonna know real quickly what it was like, and why the choices were made, and whether those are the right choices to be made. But I feel like there's just it's just a really interesting thing. A really interesting choice to go with Yasuke, and then to not give him any of the stuff that makes an assassin. But there's the other possibility people have thrown out, which is that maybe he starts that way and then he gains abilities as time goes by, and then becomes a capable assassin as time goes on. Who knows? Who knows? So anyway. Don't think so? Yeah, Jor, I'm suspicious of that speculation as well. It's like when we were talking about Starfield back in the day, and Todd was like very clear. He's like, there's no flying your ship within a planet. Like there's nothing like that. Okay, you like go out into orbit and then you can jump to spots. And he was like pretty clear about it right before the game launched. And people said, no, he's just saying that so it's all the more impressive when you do that. And it's going to be a surprise. And it was like, guys, you're just saying that he means the opposite of what he says. So he can't say anything. If he says X, you're like, oh, see, he said the X. So he's right. And then if he says Y, it's like, no, he secretly means X. He just doesn't want to say that because he wants it to be a surprise. It's okay. I think the term for that is technically cope. And see, guys, you're right. Joraptor is alive. Jor, I want you to know people were saying that they needed to see you alive before they believed that you were actually going to do the podcast. Let's see. Sumaya, thank you for that super chat. I think they created this problem by adding raiding in Valhalla, which disincentivizes stealth. Now there's also players who just want to run a camp and kill enemies, which they want to cater. Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things where we have to remember we have to remember that we may be like the boomers that just really desperately want things to be the way they once were. And so if I'm like a stealth focused player, having to play through sections of the game as Yasuke can be frustrating. That's why I think their new strategy after Shadows, which it seems to be to have different games appealing to different subgroups within the fandom, I think that's a good way to do it. Like with Hexe, you're going to appeal to the people that like the more linear narrative side of stuff. And then they're going to have these other massive, there's the one that has, I think, rumored 3 settings. I forget what that code name is, but they have all of those different games that are meant to appeal to different types of fans within the AC fan base, which I think is a better way to do it than trying to make an everything game for everybody. You know, I think that's a better way. And then real quick, Jay Vibin, thank you for the 5. I remember seeing Xbox stands laughing when AC Shadows was released because it would make Ghost of Tsushima and the PS5 obsolete. Love the streams lately. Thank you, my friend. I'm glad. And thank you guys for all the super chats and everything. We have a podcast to do with Mr. Joraptor, don't we? He lives. He's here. He's back. He's back. Back again. He's here. I just want AC Unity too. Dude, that would actually be fire.
Alex DD donated 250 Czech korunas
Thank
through
you.
Super Chat. Luke, do you think after KCD2 non-reactive RPGs like Avowed just aren't gonna cut it anymore? Paradigm shift or not?
I think it raises the bar, just like Baldur's Gate 3 raised the bar. I think it, if anything, it just raises and changes the standard. Like, would I pay $70 for Avowed? I don't think so. Barring and setting aside like the technical issues I had, I don't think I'd pay $70 for it. But would I pay $40 for it? Yeah, probably. Would I play it on Game Pass? Yeah. I think that's fair. So I think it just changes the standard, both in terms of what people demand and also what they expect for the money. And I think for like KCD2, Baldur's Gate 3 being AAA experiences, that's what you would expect. And, you know, if they don't meet that standard, that's fine. But I think players will expect a lower price point or a lower entry point with Game Pass or something like that. They need to actually finish AC Protag stories. Or they just do something like in Odyssey, no spoilers, but they just her story is basically, Cassandra's story is basically that it doesn't end. It's always there. It never stops, man. That's part of it. Okay, fam, I have Joraptor coming on to the show. Let me copy the link for you guys. I'm going to send you over to that event, okay? I'm going to post it. I can post the YouTube link because for everybody else, it's going to stay the same. If you're on Twitch, you'll just probably need to refresh. But there you go. That's the link for the podcast event. Hop over there. This stream is going to end. Give me a couple minutes and then it'll boot up with the podcast with Jor, okay? But you need to be on that other link, okay? Okay? I'll pin it too, just so everybody can see that link. All right. Thank you all for the super chats. That's wonderful. I'll be back and we'll talk about all this stuff with Joraptor, okay? So give me just a minute. If you're on Twitch, stay put. Might need to refresh, but stay put. We'll be right back, okay? Much love. Mwah.